Hey everyone, my name is Prince, and welcome to a very interesting video that I'm honestly surprised that no one has ever tried before. I've seen this done in a couple of YouTube shorts, but I've never seen anyone do an actual video on this topic before. And I really am genuinely surprised at that. But as we all know, basically since Black Ops 3, zombies has been in a bit of a rough place. Thanks to Activision fucking over Treyarch in literally every way imaginable, we basically haven't gotten an amazing zombies game since Black Ops 3. And while a lot of people, myself included, can actually make a case for Black Ops 4 and Cold War, you can't deny that they definitely have their problems. Now, I've been working on this video since before we even knew the next game was going to be Black Ops 6. And this whole video is basically based around something that we've all become pretty familiar with over the last couple of years. And that is, of course, AI. Some people like it, some people hate it, and some people are scared shitless of it. Me personally, I just think it's yet another tool for humanity to misuse. Now, while Black Ops 6 is potentially shaping up to be the zombies comeback we've wanted since Black Ops 4, I came up with this video before Black Ops 6 had arrived to give us any hope. So back before Black Ops 6 arrived and started getting me excited for the future of zombies again, I came up with the idea for a little experiment. Because obviously the previous games were the absolute disasters that were Call of Duty Vanguard and Modern Warship 3. And while they were the fault of Activision, not Treyarch, they were terrible zombies games nonetheless. So I decided to see whether or not AI could make a better zombies map than those we've had over the past couple of years. So using a combination of ChatGPT, the Bing Copilot image generator AI, the Suno music making AI, and my own imagination to string it all together, I've created a zombies map that sounds like the sort of thing we would have been getting back in the golden days of Black Ops 3. So sit back, grab a drink and a snack, and enjoy as I talk through my process of creating an AI zombies map. Make sure to go join both the casual Discord and the COD Zombies unofficial Discord in the description down below. And without further ado, let's get into it. So I think I should probably start by telling you guys exactly what it is I asked ChatGPT to come up with. So I went on to ChatGPT and I asked it to do the following. I'd like you to create a new Call of Duty Zombies map set during the events of the Black Ops 3 era. I'd like you to tell me the name of the map, where it's set, and why the Primis crew are there, as well as when it takes place in the timeline. I'd also like you to come up with a new wonder weapon for the map, a new Perk Coca-Cola drink, and for you to come up with a multi-step Easter egg for the map. As well as this, I'd like you to describe the events of the intro cutscene before you start playing the map, and the events of the outro cutscene after completing the Easter egg. Now, before this video, I'd never really delved into AI extensively, so I didn't really know how good what it was going to spit out was going to be. But let me tell you, what it did end up spitting out turned out to be pretty damn good. So let me go over everything that the AI came up with, and then I'll go over sort of how I took that and what I transformed it into. So the map name that GPT came up with was Descent of the Damned. The map is set in an ancient underground city hidden beneath the sands of Egypt. This city, long forgotten by history, was once a thriving metropolis ruled by a powerful pharaoh. Now it lies in ruins, its halls filled with the undead hordes and dark magic. For the Primis crew's objective, the AI told me that the Primis crew finds themselves drawn to this ancient city by whispers of a long-lost artifact said to hold the key to defeating the Apothecans once and for all. They believe that this artifact may hold the secret to reversing the cycle of destruction that has plagued their journey through time. I'm genuinely not making this up. This is what the AI told me. As for when the map takes place, the AI told me that the events of Descent of the Damned take place during the Black Ops 3 era, after the events of Gorod Krovi, but before Revelations. Now, the new wonder weapon is what gave me a lot of ideas for how this map could turn out. The AI told me that the new wonder weapon for this map would be the Sands of Eternity, which was a mystical staff infused with the power of the ancient gods. It can manipulate sand and time itself, creating sandstorms to disorient zombies and freezing time momentarily to give players an advantage. Now, the new Coca-Cola drink is something that I sort of had to do multiple iterations of, because basically what it came up with initially was basically the only thing I wasn't really happy with. So the initial thing it came up with was a perk named Pharaoh's Resilience, which by itself is not really that snappy of a name. And what it did was grant players enhanced durability, reducing damage taken from zombies and environmental hazards, and also increased movement speed while reloading and boosted health regeneration. So what this sounded like to me was a really weird combination of Juggernog, PhD Flopper, Stamina Up, and the Cold War version of Quick Revive. But I didn't really like anything it came up with for this perk, so I asked it to come up with a different ability whilst I came up with a different name. Now, given that the map is set within an Egyptian city, I thought including Pharaoh in the name was a pretty good idea. But Pharaoh's Resilience didn't really sound like a perk name to me, so I tried to come up with something a little bit snappier. Now, a lot of perks with really snappy names actually have alliteration in their names, like Deadshot Daiquiri, Who's Who, Widow's Wine, so I tried to come up with something like that. And so I eventually came up with the name Pharaoh's Fizz. And honestly, I think that sounds a lot better. So having come up with a better name for the perk, I turned to the AI to come up with a better ability. And after a few attempts, it actually spat out something pretty interesting. It presented the idea that Pharaoh's Fizz not only grants enhanced durability, which I don't really agree with, so I think we'll remove that bit. It came up with the ability that Pharaoh's Fizz actually imbues players with the powers of the Ancients, allowing them to harness the energy of defeated zombies. Upon killing zombies, a portion of their essence is absorbed, temporarily increasing the player's damage output for a short duration. This boost encourages players to actively engage with the undead horde to maintain their enhanced combat prowess. And honestly, I thought this was a really cool ability for a perk to have. And having this perk as one of your 4 slots could completely change the way you play the map. But we'll circle back round to talk about Pharaoh's Fizz a little bit later. The next thing it came up with was the Easter egg, and it came up with 3 different relatively simple steps, but steps for an Easter egg nonetheless. Step 1 was unearthing the artifact. Players must uncover fragments of the ancient artifact scattered throughout the map. Once all fragments are found, they must be brought to the central chamber and assembled. Step 2 is empowering the artifact, the step in which the players must charge the artifact with the power of the elements by completing elemental trials in different areas of the map. These trials involve defeating waves of zombies while standing in specific locations imbued with elemental energy. And step 3, the final step, would be confronting the Pharaoh. With the artifact fully charged, players must face the resurrected Pharaoh who guards the path to the Apothecon realm. Defeating the Pharaoh will grant access to the portal where the final battle against the Apothecons awaits. Now, this Easter egg gave me so many ideas on how the map could unfold and the story behind it, but again, we're gonna circle back to that in a second. Then we had the intro and outro cutscenes that the AI came up with. The AI described the intro cutscene as the following. The cutscene opens with the Primis crew arriving at the entrance of the ancient city, guided by cryptic messages left behind by an ancient civilization. As they descend into the depths, they are met with the sight of the once great city now overrun by the undead. Richtofen, Nikolai, Dempsey, and Takio steel themselves for the challenges ahead, knowing that the fate of existence itself hangs in the balance. And as for the outro cutscene, the AI described it as the following. After completing the Easter egg and defeating the Apothecons, the Primis crew stands victorious amidst the ruins of the ancient city. With the artifact in hand, they use its power to seal the tears in reality caused by the Apothecon's influence. As the skies clear and the undead retreat, Richtofen gazes into the horizon, knowing that their journey is far from over, but for now, they have brought a moment of peace to the universe. And already, does all of this not sound like 10 times better than all of the stuff we've had since 2016 with Black Ops 3? Now, after this, I also asked it to come up with a round-based boss enemy for the map and an Easter egg song. The boss it came up with was something called the Guardian of the Sands. This is a colossal mummified guardian brought to life by dark dark magic. It serves as the protector of the ancient city, tasked with preventing intruders from reaching the secrets hidden within its depths. The Guardian of the Sands resembles a towering, heavily armored figure adorned with ancient Egyptian symbols and hieroglyphs. Its body is wrapped in tattered bandages, and its eyes glow with an eerie, otherworldly light. It has 3 abilities, which are called the Sands of Retribution, which is when the Guardian summons whirlwinds of sand that sweep across the battlefield, knocking players off their feet and dealing damage over time. Wrath of the Ancients, which is funny considering that's the name of the bow in Der Eisendrache, where it unleashes powerful energy blasts from its hands, targeting players with devastating ranged attacks that can quickly down unsuspecting survivors. And Mummification, which is where periodically the Guardian of the Sands enters a defensive stance, enveloping itself in an impenetrable barrier of bandages that mitigates incoming damage. Players must coordinate their attacks and find a way to break through the barrier to continue damaging the boss. And honestly, I think that sounds like a pretty decent boss. There are a few tweaks that I'd make to it, but again, we'll circle back to that in a second. Right now, I'm just telling you guys everything that the AI came up with. The Guardian of the Sands appears at specific intervals throughout the game, typically after completing certain objectives or reaching milestone rounds. Players must work together to weaken and ultimately defeat the boss, utilizing the map's layout and available resources to their advantage. Defeating the Guardian of the Sands grants valuable rewards such as bonus points, powerful weapons, or exclusive upgrades, making it a formidable but rewarding challenge for players to overcome. Now, as for the Easter egg song, I'll admit, originally I basically just asked the AI to choose an existing song from real life to be featured as the Easter egg song, and funnily enough, it actually came up with Walk Like an Egyptian by the Bangles. And honestly, I think that'd be a pretty funny Easter egg song. But whilst I was recording this video, I started to think that doesn't really fit with what an Easter egg song is supposed to be in a zombies map. Because the Easter egg songs in zombies maps are really, really good. They always reflect the tone of the map, and more often than not, the songs are incredible. Like Where We Going from Mob of the Dead and Always Running from Buried, those two are genuinely some of my favorite songs ever. So literally, while I was recording this, I began to wonder whether or not there was an AI music generator that I could use to create a good Easter egg song for the map. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't have high hopes, and even if I did find something, then I imagined that it probably wouldn't be free. However, after a brief bit of searching, I stumbled across a website called Suno. And the song that this website managed to come up with was incredible. And I'm actually gonna leave this to the very end of this video because it gives you guys a reason to watch to the end of the video, but I promise you guys, you are gonna want to stick around to the end of the video to hear this song. So with all of that out of the way, we can move on to the fun part of this video, and that is taking everything that the AI came up with and modifying it and combining it all together to make a good zombies map. So let's start off with the basic premise of the map itself. The map name that ChatGPT came up with was Descent of the Damned. And while that's not necessarily a bad name, I think it's a bit too close to Voyage of the Damned, which of course we already have. Editing prints here, it's actually Voyage of Despair. That just goes to show how little I remember about the Black Ops 4 maps. But at the same time, I still don't think that Descent of the Damned was that snappy of a zombies map name, so I'm still glad I ended up changing it. So I decided to shorten the name to simply Descent. Now, I know we already have a map named Descent, which is the final map of Exo Zombies, but I thought it'd be really cool if we could have a new zombies map with the same name that was a hell of a lot better than an Exo Zombies map. So the AI came up with the idea that the map is set in an ancient underground city in Egypt, which is really cool in multiple ways actually, because not only have we never visited Egypt in the zombie storyline, despite the fact that we actually saw that Victus visited Egypt during their journey between Die Rise and Buried, a lot of the stuff in this map actually reminds me a lot of the Chaos storyline, to do with mythology and ancient gods and stuff like that, and I think combining that with the Primis crew is actually really cool. Now, the two things that the AI came up with that really got my imagination whirring was both the new wonder weapon and one of the steps of the Easter egg. Because the new wonder weapon, as I described, was a mystical staff infused with the power of the ancient gods that can manipulate sand and time. And the first thing I thought of when I read that was, holy shit, this AI has just come up with a 5th origin staff. And then when it was talking about the Easter egg steps, the second step was charging the artifact with the power of the elements by completing elemental trials in different areas of the map. So then that got me thinking, what if each of these areas actually correspond to each of the 4 elements of the original origin staff? Fire, lightning, ice, and wind. And then I thought, well, if we've got one staff, why don't we have the other 4 as well? So what I basically came up with is that this map would basically be Origins 2.0. Now, the AI came up with the idea that this city was once a thriving metropolis that was ruled by a powerful pharaoh. And from that, I've come up with a lot of different ideas as to what this map could be in terms of lore and gameplay, so sit back and enjoy. So first off, I thought it'd be really cool for the zombies to have a unique eye color for the map. I was originally gonna go for purple, considering we really haven't had purple-eyed zombies before, but I didn't really think that that would fit with the overall theme of the map, so I decided to go for orange. Now, those of you who have seen my COD Zombies All Eye Colors video will know that we've already had orange eye-colored zombies, but we only had them once at the very end of the buried Easter egg with Maxis taking control. Now, the eye color of those zombies were sort of a very dark orange, so I decided to see if I could create zombies with a bit of a brighter orange eye color, in order to distinguish that Maxis actually wasn't in control. And this is where we get onto the fun stuff, because as I mentioned at the start, a big part of making this video was using Bing's Designer Copilot AI in order to make images of all of these ideas. So I asked the AI to come up with images of orange-eyed Egyptian zombies. And while it did take a few attempts, it did not disappoint. These were the 2 best images it came up with, and as you can see, they look pretty damn cool. And it's awesome that I was able to generate sort of different variations, because obviously in all zombies maps we have slightly different variations of zombies. We have like 3 or 4 different models for them. And obviously here we have what seems to be like an old man who was just a citizen. And then we have one that looks a bit more esteemed. Perhaps he was a bit higher up in the city's hierarchy. But either way, both of these look really cool. Now, as for the map itself, my sort of vision for what the map looked like is, as the AI said, an Egyptian city underground in a sort of underground dome of rock. And the map would also have 4 different elemental areas in each corner of the map. Areas that corresponded to the original elements of the 4 origin staffs. Now, none of the images that I generated were exactly right, but there were quite a few that came close. We had this one, which I think is the closest to getting the sort of underground cave appearance the way I wanted it to look, but I think it doesn't really look enough like a city, and each of the areas don't really look unique enough to each element. Then we had this one, which was a little bit better, and it looked a lot more like a city, but the problem I have with this one is that I think it's a little bit too big, plus you can see a giant hole in the back with like ranging mountains and the sky as well, and obviously that's not what it's meant to be. It's meant to be an underground city. But the 2 best ones by far that looked really good were this one and this one. Now, this first one I really like. I love the very different environments for each of the 4 different elements, but whilst the floating island aspect looks really cool, I think it's a bit too separate. I like all 3 of these areas exactly the way they are, but while them being on different levels does look really cool, I would prefer them to be on the same level as part of one big city. But I really do like the different elements of all of these, and my personal favorites is probably the lightning and and the wind one. I think they look awesome. Then I actually recreated that image as a 1920 by 1080 image, and it gave me this one. Now, this one is a lot better in many different respects. For one, the center bit actually does look like a city, and the 4 different elemental areas are a lot more refined. But the thing I don't really like about this one is that on either side of the city, you have those weird mountainous areas. Like on the right, you have that blue and red mountainous area, and on the left, that area honestly looks like mountains of element 115, which could be a cool idea, but I don't really see how it could fit into the map without sticking out like a sore thumb. Maybe it could be downscaled a little bit. Instead of like giant mountains of element 115, maybe like embedded into the side of the cave, there's actually a tunnel that leads to like a massive cavern of element 115, and maybe that's where you build the staffs. But if I could combine elements of each of these 4 images into one image, I think it'd be a pretty good idea of what my vision of the map would look like. I would take the city layout from this image, the cave design from this image, maybe the layout of the different elemental areas from this image, and the design of the elemental areas from this image, put it into one image, and that would be Descent. So having said all of that, now I want to move on and talk about the story of the map, because GPT came up with the idea that the city was once ruled by a powerful pharaoh, and it also came up with the idea that the pharaoh would be the final boss of the map. And on top of the fact that Primis were apparently here to find some sort of artifact to help them defeat the Apothicons, it seems as though this map actually has links to the Apothicons, because it says that the pharaoh is actually the one guarding the path to the Apothicon realm. Now, if we're going off this being before Revelations but after Garod, the Apothicons are still locked in the Dark Ether, so why is there a portal to the Dark Ether in this random Egyptian city? Well, what if with this pharaoh we're dealing with a Brutus situation? Maybe this pharaoh is actually the one in control of the zombies, because nestled within this pyramid is another of the Apothicons' bloody pyramid devices. The same sort of device as the MPD that Samantha and Richtofen used to control the zombies. Or maybe this Egyptian society actually made their own version of the MPD, just like Broken Arrow did. Now we've got the EPD, the Egyptian pyramid device. Maybe in this universe where Descent takes place, instead of the Great War happening in France, which led to Origins, maybe the Great War happened in Egypt, and this city was built by the pharaoh who helped Primis defeat the Apothicons. That would actually explain why there's different elemental areas and why the pieces from the original staffs are there, because this was the battlefield of the Great War, and when Primis died, the original Origin staffs were bestowed to this pharaoh and all of his people for safekeeping. But then maybe many hundreds of years later, one of the descendants of the original pharaoh built the EPD because maybe they worshipped the keepers as gods and they wanted to try and communicate with them. Maybe the city was going through a particularly rough time and the pharaoh wanted to communicate with the keepers for guidance. But building the EPD and going inside it, perhaps he was corrupted by the Dark Ether like Samantha and Richtofen, and he started hearing the voice of the Shadow Man. And when he went inside the EPD, he used the Dark Ether to basically corrupt all of the citizens of the city, infecting them with the Dark Ether and turning them into zombies. But then maybe before he could open up a gateway for the Shadow Man and all of the Apothicons to escape the Dark Ether, maybe someone stopped him, maybe his son or one of his servants, maybe they shut down the EPD or trapped him inside it, and then when Primis enter the city, it reactivates the EPD somehow. Maybe it detects their presence as other living things, and all of the zombies awaken again, and the pharaoh is resurrected to continue the plan of helping the Shadow Man and the Apothicons escape the Dark Ether. Now, the intro cutscene says it opens with the Primis crew arriving at the entrance of the ancient city, guided by cryptic messages, and then descending into the depths. They're met with the sight of the once great city overrun by the undead, and they steel themselves themselves for another battle against the zombies. So how I imagine this going is it starts in a similar way to the Blood of the Dead cutscene. Maybe it starts with Dempsey turning on a lighter and they're like examining hieroglyphs on the walls, and then they go into a slightly larger room with a bunch of corpses everywhere, and then the camera zooms in on one of the corpses and their eyes light up orange, and then all of the zombies start coming back to life and attacking Primis. They run through the corridors and then they go onto a sort of elevator that lowers them down into the rest of the city from above, and that's how the map begins. And maybe you actually start in the game on top of the elevator, like in the middle of the city right next to the pyramid. Now I did try my best to come up with an image of what the intro cutscene could look like. I'll bring a few of the best ones up on screen, but the main problem is that the AI simply refused to understand that the whole city was meant to be underground. It always kept featuring sky in the background, despite how many times I specified that the city was supposed to be completely underground. But regardless, I think this one is probably my favorite, mainly because it looks sort of the most like Richtofen or Dempsey. But hopefully what I've described, combined with all of the images you're seeing on screen now, could give you a pretty good idea on what the intro cutscene could be. Now I do want to talk about the whole thing about the timeline that the AI mentioned, because GPT came up with the idea that the events of Descent take place after Gorod Krovi but before Revelations. But I came up with an alternate idea. What if this map was DLC 4 for Black Ops 3 instead of Revelations? Do you guys think that'd be a better map? Because honestly, I think an Origins sequel set in an underground Egyptian city with uniquely colored-eyed zombies and 5 different staffs would be a hell of a lot better than a bunch of fragmented pieces of the pre-existing map smashed together into one map. But you know, that's just me. I'm not saying that Revelations is bad, but I think this would definitely be one hell of a finale for Black Ops 3 Zombies. So maybe instead of going to Revelations and having Maxis fuck everything up by letting the Shadow Man out, maybe Monty sent them to this place to get this artifact, telling them that it was going to help them defeat the Apothecans, but in truth, maybe it was going to be used to destroy every other reality apart from his perfect universe. But speaking of the artifact, I actually tried to create an image of what this artifact could look like. Now, after a bit of brainstorming, I did actually come up with a pretty solid idea of what I wanted the artifact to look like. I wanted it to be a spherical artifact like the summoning key, but instead of being a solid ball of metal, it was actually made of a series of rotating rings that were within one another. Basically, there'd be a big outer ring, which would be yellow with wind symbols and contain a fragment of the wind crystal from the wind staff. Then there'd be a ring within that, but it would be blue with ice symbols, and it would have a fragment of the ice crystal embedded within it. Then another one within that was purple for the lightning crystal, and then one within that for the fire crystal. And then at the very center, there would be a fragment of an orange crystal. Now, I'll talk about that in a second, but unfortunately, no matter how clearly I described this idea, the AI just could not get it right. Literally, the only design that managed to get the rings even remotely right was this one. I tried to get it to create more images of the rings looking like this, but genuinely I could not get it to recreate it anything like this, until it eventually spat out a design that, while it wasn't what I originally wanted, it was a pretty cool design, so I decided to go for it. So ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the artifact of Descent, the Agarthan Catalyst. A powerful artifact harnessing the power of all 5 of the elements. Now, speaking of the 5 elements, let's talk about the staffs. Because as I said, if this takes place in a universe where the Great War happened in Egypt, that would make sense as to why the origin staffs are here. But as I mentioned earlier, the new wonder weapon it came up with was the Sands of Eternity, which is a mystical staff that can manipulate sand and time. And again, when I read that, I was like, holy shit, that is literally describing a 5th origin staff. So I decided to try and can generate an image of a 5th origin staff. Now, obviously, in origins, we have an orange staff, a purple staff, a blue staff, and a yellow staff, each one corresponding to an element. But although the logical 5th staff would probably be green, and I actually do have a separate video planned where I use AI to create a 5th green origin staff, but I thought the best color for the crystal of this staff would actually be orange, because the 5th element, I'd say, would probably either be nature or earth, and considering it's saying that it's manipulating sand, I'm leaning more towards earth. So I think in this map, the Sands of Eternity, or the Earth staff, would actually have an orange crystal, and I'd change the fire crystal to be more red. And so I went to work trying to generate an image of what this Earth staff could look like. I went through so many different iterations, but unfortunately, at least at first, none of them were perfect. I started off with this one, which had a fantastically designed handle that literally looks exactly like an origin staff, but although the top looks really cool and Egyptian-y, it doesn't really fit the shape of the crystals that are usually in the origin staffs. Not to mention that the crystal is usually a lot more exposed at the top, and obviously that's not the case here. Then we had this one, which was quite a lot better. I really liked the design of the claws either side, but the crystal unfortunately wasn't the right shape. Then we had this one, which apart from it being too short, I think the claws at the top are a little bit too similar to the fire staff. Not to mention the sort of mechanical design of the handle is sort of gone a bit. Then we had this one, which again, I like the design of the sort of spike surrounding it, but the mechanical design again isn't really there. The crystal is a little bit too chunky, and honestly, I think I'd want the ornaments surrounding the crystal to be a little bit more flashy. Although it does have the 3 little glowing pieces that charge up with the upgraded staffs in Origins, so that's something. I'd say the closest design I got in the initial couple of attempts was probably this one. The handle is a little bit too mechanical, but the crystal is a very good shape, and the sort of ornaments around the crystal are pretty good. But I still wasn't very happy, and so a couple of days later, I gave it one more attempt, and literally, the first design it spat out was perfect. Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Staff of Earth. Literally everything about this staff is perfect. This is 110% an origin staff. The crystal is the perfect shape. The ornaments around the crystal look perfect and unique. The mechanical design of the handle is there with elements of Egyptian inspiration. And it's even got the 3 glowy bits for when the staff charges up. So yeah, very, very happy with what the AI spat out for that one. Now you may be wondering, how can we have 5 staffs if there's only 4 players? Well, I thought a really cool idea for this is that we have the 4 original staffs, but then we also have the Earth staff, and the thing about the Earth staff is that you can't actually hold on to it permanently. The abilities of the Earth staff, like the AI described, was creating sandstorms and freezing time. So the way I see that working in terms of a staff is that the primary ability of the staff, you know, the one you use just by pressing the trigger once, would probably be a mix between the Ice staff primary ability and the Wind staff primary ability. A sort of sandstorm blast that would allow you to slow down the zombies in order to kill them easily. As for the freezing time ability, maybe that's the ability you get when you upgrade it. Maybe the longer you charge it up, the longer time is frozen for. But the thing about the Earth staff that I've come up with is that you can't actually hold on to it indefinitely. Because the sort of power of Earth is the power that the Pharaoh is using, as well as the boss zombies that I mentioned earlier, maybe the longer you hold on to the Earth staff, the more detrimental it becomes. Let's say, for instance, you have Juggernog. That means that you can take around 5 hits before going down. So let's say you pick up the Earth staff around round 20. Now, for the entirety of round 20, you can use the Earth staff and it's no bother. But then on round 21, if you still have the staff, it takes away one of your hits, so you're more vulnerable. So now on round 21, you can only take 4 hits. Then on round 22, you can only take 3 hits, so you're back to basically not having Juggernog anymore. Then the next round after that, you can take 2 hits. Then the next round after that, you're stuck at 1 hit. And the way you get around this is by placing the staff back on its pedestal for it to sort of recharge. Now, this wouldn't be a cheap thing that you could cheese, as in you couldn't like have it for the entirety of round 20, place it back at the end of round 20, and then pick it up on round 21 and still have your full health. If you use it for 3 entire rounds, it has to recharge for 3 entire rounds. So I think that could add an interesting element to the staff. Although maybe the abilities I've described the staff having wouldn't actually warrant you taking that risk. So maybe you can have one of the 4 original staffs and the Earth staff. Maybe you can have both. I think that'd actually be pretty fun because the Earth staff seemingly is more of a support staff, whereas all of the other staffs are more on the offensive side. So moving on from the staffs to the new Coca-Cola drink, Pharaoh's Fizz, I was actually able to generate 2 different images of what the perk could look like. Now, I'll be honest, I didn't really have high hopes for the AI generating a good perk machine. But once again, it surprised me and gave me these 2 images. Now, generally, I think I prefer the one on the left a little bit more, but I think it looks a little bit too much like a vending machine, and I also don't like the fact that it has the Coca-Cola logo on it, because usually perk machines don't have that. So I think I prefer the one on the right a little bit more, mainly because it sort of combines the sort of 1940s, 50s vending machine look with the whole Egyptian pharaoh appearance. Not to mention that this one actually gave us an actual logo for Pharaoh's Fizz, and that is actually a really cool perk logo. And I actually took that logo and tried my best to actually make a perk symbol for it. It doesn't look the best, I'll admit, but I think it looks half decent. So yeah, everyone, that's Pharaoh's Fizz, and honestly, I really like what the AI eventually came up with for Pharaoh's Fizz. The whole thing that the more you kill zombies, you sort of absorb their essence and your damage output increases. It'd sort of be a more balanced version of double tap and one that was more sustainable, in that a lot of people's methods in zombies are to do with training, and you know, using double pack punch abilities every now and then in order to kill the zombies once they've all bunched up into one big horde. But this perk could actually encourage players to kill zombies as soon as they see them to keep the damage bonus up. So yeah, I really think that Pharaoh's Fizz could be a really fun perk to use, and it could do exactly what a perk is supposed to do, and that is change the way you play the game and make it easier. Now, moving on from that, I want to go back to talking about the round-based boss enemy. Now, the AI called it the Guardian of the Sands. I think it'd just be better to call it a Guardian. It's a bit snappier, you know, like Panzer, Mangler, Margwa, you know, it fits in with all of those snappy names. So I tried to come up with a couple of images of what a Guardian could look like. I sort of came up with the idea that the Guardians are sort of like the Pharaoh's personal guards, and maybe they gained special abilities because they were really close to him when he first gained control of the EPD, and maybe because he was combining the power of Earth and the Dark Ether, maybe that's why they have all of these abilities, and maybe that's why the Earth staff is actually dangerous to use as opposed to all of the other staff. So I came up with 3 different images of what a Guardian could look like, and I suppose these could be, you know, different variations of appearance for a Guardian, because as I was generating these images, that was something I actually realized that they don't really do a lot of when it comes to boss zombies. They sort of just have one appearance for the boss, and that's it. I mean, obviously, when it comes to bosses like Brutus, for instance, it doesn't really make sense for him to look different each time. But for stuff like the Panzer Soldat, surely you would have panzers that had slightly varying appearances. So these are the images that the AI came up with for the Guardians, and honestly, I really like all 3 of these, but I think that these 2 variations are absolutely the most intimidating. I think these look really intimidating, and honestly, I think if I was playing Descent and I saw one of these appear, I think I'd probably shit myself. Maybe the same as the Panzer spawning in, there could be like a sound to signify that one of these guys were spawning in. Maybe it was like an ominous bell sound effect. And I'd say that these guys would probably walk quite slowly. They wouldn't be like Brutus or Panzer speed, but their attacks would be a lot more powerful as a result. Like the AI described, it had the Sands of Retribution, where it sort of summons a whirlwind of sand that sweeps sweeps across the battlefield, which could be something similar to what the Earth Staff could do. Then there's the Wrath of the Ancients, where it shoots the energy blast at you, and I think without Jug, that would probably insta-kill you. And maybe with Jug, it would red screen you. Editing Prince here. Looking back on this, I think a one-shot attack without Jug would be a little bit too overpowered. Maybe it would red screen you if you didn't have Jug, and then if you did, it would take like half your health. And then the third skill, Mummification, maybe if it's taking like so much damage at once, it enters that defensive stance where you can't hit it for a couple of seconds. But yeah, I think the Guardian would be a really cool and really powerful round-based enemy, and one that I definitely think players would be afraid of. Like, I really think this thing would instill the same fear, probably more so, as the siren that plays when the Panzer appears in Origins. Now, I do also want to briefly talk about Pack-a-Punch camos. And for full disclosure, this is something that I've come up with whilst recording this. I know, I'm totally professional, but obviously for each map in Black Ops 3, we had our own Pack-a-Punch camo. And starting in Der Eisendrache, we actually had more than one. So I thought it'd be fun if I asked the AI to come up with a Pack-a-Punch camo for the weapons in Descent. Now, I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted it to look like, sort of like a sandstony camo with like glowing orange hieroglyphs on it, and this was basically what it came up with. Now, this isn't perfect. I think the sandstone elements look a little bit too much like wood, but the glowing hieroglyphs and the pharaoh patterns on it are basically exactly what I wanted. So basically, just imagine this, but with the sandstony bits looking a lot more sandstony, and just a mix of the sandstone bits and the sort of black, smooth metal bits with the orange glowing hieroglyphs. And you have there, ladies and gentlemen, the Pack-a-Punch camo for Descent. Now, I think the last thing we have to talk about is probably the ending cutscene, and by extension, actually, the boss battle. Because I think it'd be really cool if, like the AI said, you build the Agarthan Catalyst from pieces around the map, including fragments from the Origin Staff crystals, which would probably mean you would need to build all of the staffs in order to do the Easter egg, and then you use the Agarthan Catalyst to maybe open the EPD and fight the Pharaoh. Also, Editing Prince here again, I do actually want to add something about the Agarthan Catalyst that I didn't actually come up with, because I was talking to Jason of all people. A few of you may know Jason, but for those of you who don't, Jason is a good friend of mine. He's appeared in quite a few of my videos, and he is a bit of a lunatic. But he actually gave me the idea that instead of just being an Easter egg thing, the Agarthan Catalyst could actually be used in the game normally as well, and that maybe you could actually charge it up in the different areas of the map and use it as a sort of specialist weapon like the ones from Black Ops 3. And maybe, depending on what element you charged it up with, you could actually use it in different ways. So yeah, I thought that was a cool idea, and I did want to give credit to Jason for that. But then maybe because you use the Agarthan Catalyst to open the EPD, and that contains fragments of all of the different staffs, that actually gives the Pharaoh power over all of the elements at once. And maybe in the boss battle, all 5 staffs are available to you, and you have to use all 5 staffs in order to defeat the Pharaoh. Maybe he'll create a shield out of ice, and you have to use the fire staff to destroy it, and then you can only actually hurt him by using the earth staff. And maybe the boss battle arena is a giant underground chamber inside the pyramid that has a giant portal that the Pharaoh is trying to open whilst you're fighting him that leads to the Dark Ether. Now, I've actually come up with a name for this Pharaoh, as well as a couple of AI images of what he could look like. I initially created just an image of him with orange magic swirling around him, just to symbolize the power of Earth, and I guess the sort of power he has over the zombies, because obviously they have orange eyes. But having literally just come up with the idea that he gains control of all of the elements at once, I just quickly generated an image as to what that might look like. So ladies and gentlemen, I present to you the Pharaoh Kanebti, the final boss of the map Descent. And honestly, I think both images look absolutely awesome. The version of him just with the orange magic looks intimidating as hell, but the version of him with all of the different elements, like, he looks like a COD Zombies boss now. So you use all of the staffs in order to defeat him. If you're on solo, obviously, you'd have to keep swapping out staffs, but then if you're in a 4-player game, you could have one person with each staff, and then one person with the earth staff as well. So after you defeat Kanebti, as the AI says, with the artifact in hand, they use its power to seal the tears in reality caused by the Apothecan's influence. So I guess that after defeating Kanebti, they use the Agarthan Catalyst in order to close the portal to the Dark Ether that Kanebti was trying to open, once again thwarting the Apothecans and saving the universe once again. Now, the AI did say after defeating the Apothecans, which again doesn't really make sense because the final boss is the Pharaoh, not the Apothecans. So the way I sort of see this is an alternate ending to Black Ops 3 Zombies. Less of a sort of in-your-face ending like the Revelations one was, and more of a cliffhanger to say that this isn't the end, there will be more. So it ends with the Primis crew returning to the surface maybe, and gazing out over the horizon. Maybe the sun is rising, and, you know, it's more of a hopeful ending. Because if you think about it, we've really never had a hopeful ending in a Zombies game before. Because we had World at War, which obviously didn't really have an ending. Then we had Black Ops 1, where the moon blows up, you know, that was very bad, and, you know, Richtofen gained control of the zombies, which was also very bad. And Black Ops 2 kind of ended negatively with Buried. Honestly, I've always seen it that Buried is more of like the ending of Black Ops 2, and Origins, as opposed to being the ending of Black Ops 2, I more see it as the beginning of Black Ops 3. Then with Revelations, it was a sort of, not a bad ending, but we sort of figured out that, you know, Monty wasn't really gonna keep our characters safe. And then obviously Black Ops 4, well, we don't talk about Black Ops 4. But regardless, I think this would just be, like, not necessarily a happy ending, but just sort of a peaceful ending. A peaceful cliffhanger to say that, you know, the Primis character's journey isn't over, but for now at least they've claimed a victory. Now, I did actually create a couple of images to try and show you guys what the outro cutscene could look like. And I actually generated two different ones based on two different bits of the outro cutscene. Now, this first one was actually really good by accident because I tried to get it to generate an image of the Primis crew looking into a portal. But what it actually gave me was them looking through a sort of gateway and seeing a blue sun. And that actually fits perfectly because as far as I know, in the Dark Ether where the Apothecans are, that's where the Apothecan sun actually is. And we see the Apothecan sun in Revelations, so this is actually perfect. So this is an image of the Primis crew looking through the gateway that Kanebti was trying to open and seeing the Apothecan sun in the Dark Ether. Or wherever it is the Apothecan sun actually is. I assume it's the Dark Ether. And ignore the fact that these characters don't really look like the Primis characters. It's very hard to get them to look like the Primis characters. I'm just glad they didn't have glowing orange backpacks, because that was something that it generated quite a few times. Honestly, they look like fucking Exo Zombies characters. But the second image is actually this one, and I really like this one because it actually does kind of look like Richtofen from behind, and it's literally just him gazing out over the sunrise, and this is pretty much exactly how I imagine it to look. So yeah, I'm really happy with this one. And honestly, everyone, that's about as much as I have for you on Descent. Apart from the Easter egg song, obviously. I haven't forgotten about that. I'll talk about that in a second. I could honestly go far more in depth than I have done in this video. I could talk about, like, the different upgrade quests you could do for the staffs. I could talk about the location of Pack-a-Punch. I think it'd be really cool to have it on, like, a little platform on top of the pyramid. I could talk about the perks and, like, where they are in the map. Obviously, you'd have your regular perks that you'd have on most Black Ops 3 maps. You'd have the Wonder Fizz machine. Obviously, you'd have Pharaoh's Fizz as well. Maybe you could even have the return of PhD Flopper as PhD Slider. Maybe you could have it be called Pharaoh's Flopper. How about that? Maybe that could be a perk to not negate, but lower damage from environmental hazards around the map. Because if there's different areas for each element, I imagine that there may be some environmental hazards there. Then again, that may be a bit too much of an essential perk to have, and you guys know my opinions on perks that make every other perk not worth having. Then again, Pharaoh's Fizz does that quite a bit. I'd probably not buy any other fourth perk if Pharaoh's Fizz was on the map. But then again, the counterweight with Pharaoh's Fizz is that you have to continuously kill zombies to keep the boost. So I guess that would counteract its overpoweredness. But anyway, that is going to be it for this video talking about Descent. A map put together by by myself from the ideas generated by AI. And I know this is a long shot, but I'll put it out anyway. If by any chance there are some talented custom map makers watching this video, and you're interested in making this idea a reality, then join the COD Zombies unofficial Discord down in the description down below and shoot me a DM. I know it's very unlikely that we could ever get this map to be a real thing, especially considering how long it takes people to make decent custom maps. Like, for fuck's sake, the remaster of Die Rise that Mr. T Lexify and his gang have been making has taken a year. So God knows how long it would take to make something like this a reality. But if by any chance anyone watching this video is a talented map maker and you want to help me make Descent a reality, then shoot me a DM in Discord and maybe we could figure something out. But even if Descent never ends up becoming an actual thing, personally, I'm really happy with the ideas that I've come up with for this video. I think this would be a hella fun map to play, and honestly, would probably be a better finale for Black Ops 3 Zombies than Revelations was. Now, as promised, I'm ending this video with the Easter egg song that I generated for Descent using the website Suno. And again, I didn't have any faith that this website was going to be able to create anything even remotely similar to Easter egg song quality music. But once again, AI surprised me and generated The Sands of Destiny, a song truly worthy of being the Easter egg song for Descent. Now, there is a little bit of a drawback with this. I myself was actually quite surprised that Suno let you generate songs of this quality for free, but I discovered only after I'd recorded this video that if you generate them for free, you can't actually use them for anything monetized, which means that I can't actually put it in this video because this video is monetized. But what I can do, and I actually did email them to make sure I could do this, is include the song in a separate, unmonetized, unlisted video and have an end screen link for you guys to click on at the end of this video. So what I've done is I've taken this song and combined it with a bunch of different clips from a bunch of different COD Zombies cutscenes and music videos, and clips of me playing Origins in the sort of underground areas near the Crazy Place portals, in order to make the closest possible thing to a cinematic music video for Descent. So that should be on screen any second now. Thanks a lot for watching, everyone. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and go join both the Discords in the description down below. Leave any suggestions for any other AI videos I could do, COD Zombies or otherwise, in the comments down below, and I will see you on another video or stream very, very soon. Goodbye, everyone.